Birds get the win in week 1, but it certainly wasn't pretty. We'll talk about takeaways from the game alongside with team updates. Plus, the NFL hands out their punishment to Jalen Carter as he's looking forward to week 2 and hoping to put the incident behind him. Without wasting any more time, let's dive right into it. What's up, y'all, and welcome to 2nd and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast powered by Old City Sports Network, the best network for all your Philadelphia sports needs. This is your host, Michael Roscoe. The Birds get a win in week 1 by a score of 24-20, in which the ground game dominated. Quarterback Jalen Hurts had 2 touchdowns on the ground, while Saquon Barkley managed to find the end zone, and a Jake Elliott field goal brought it up to 24. Dallas running back Javonte Williams scored 2 on the ground as well, with Brandon Aubrey kicking 2 field goals. Jalen Hurts would go 19 for 23 for 152 yards, 0 touchdowns through the air, but 0 interceptions. Before we get into the takeaways from this game, let's go ahead and talk some Eagles news. Starting things off, the NFL hands out its punishment to Eagles All-Pro defensive tackle Jalen Carter after he spit on Dak Prescott's jersey, causing him to be ejected just 6 fucking seconds into the game and without playing a single defensive snap. The league will not suspend him. However, they did issue a fine worth a whopping $57,222, the equivalent of his paycheck for 1 game. Which, to me, this looks like the NFL is trying to send a giant message to the rest of the league as they've expressed its emphasis on sportsmanship and cracking down on unsportsmanlike conduct situations. Now look, what Jalen Carter did was inexcusable, disrespectful, and utterly fucking stupid, man. Come on. He got rage baited by Dak Prescott, and he fucking fell for it. His previous character issues also make this situation a lot worse. But just looking at the situation, his teammate is on the ground, writhing in pain, and is just in utter disbelief. And instead of being there for him, Carter is out here engaging in these bullshit antics. That says something about you as a teammate. At the very least, says something as a teammate in that moment. He should have been there to support Ben instead of getting into a pissing contest with Dak Prescott. Van Sumeren deserved a lot better than that from his teammate. Now, despite Carter's actions, I am glad, obviously with a little bit of bias, that the league did not move forward with suspending him for the Week 2 game. Considering that he was ejected in the first 6 seconds, he effectively served a 1-game suspension, and the league said, yep, we agree with that. Move forward. If the league, however, did go and suspend him into week 2, that would be a big thing because it would have broken precedent. Historically, there has not been a suspension on top of a fine for one player spitting on another. Bill Romanowski did it in 1997. T.O. and Sean Taylor both spit on other players in 2006. And many other players have done it since then as well. And with all of those situations, there has only been a fine. So if the league moved forward with suspending him, then they will need to suspend every player that does it afterward, because if they had suspended him, but then not gone through the same way with other or any cases after the fact, then that would be a huge issue, because to me, that would present as bias and or favoritism, because the league can't be cherry picking who they do and don't suspend for the same incident. Listen, I am not condoning the behavior that occurred from Jalen Carter. He's got to pull his head out of his ass and get it together. You always put the team before yourself. Don't let your ego get the best of you, and just don't stoop to the low level of others. I am a little butthurt that Dak didn't get any type of repercussions though. People want to talk about, oh, Dak was just spitting at the ground when people say Dak spit first. Because he did. It's in fucking 4K that he takes a couple steps forward, goes in between two offensive linemen, spits in the direction of a player, then looks up and has this dumbass fucking smirk on his face. It's all over the replay. So let me ask y'all this. You're walking down the street, minding your own business, and if a random stranger out on the street went out of their way, went in between two other people walking on the street, and intentionally hocked tua'd at your feet or direction, you're telling me that you wouldn't be pissed off at that? You wouldn't consider that unsportsmanlike if it was on the field? Or at the very least, you wouldn't feel a little disrespected? I would have to guess that the majority of those answering those questions would feel disrespected, pissed off, upset, whatever. Now again, those feelings do not condone or warrant Jalen Carter's actions, but I can understand the feelings he probably had in that moment when Dak spit first. Overall, I hope the fucking hefty ass fine on Carter puts things into perspective for him, and him publicly owning up to his mistake is a small start. It's not the total solution, but it's a small start. Additionally, according to his agent, Carter is not going to appeal the fine and focus on week 2, as he fucking should. Hopefully things go up for Carter moving forward here, and that he's learned his lesson. Moving on, we had a series of roster moves to talk about. So, the Eagles made a few moves to the active roster. They made some practice squad ones too, but I'm focusing on the active roster. First, they waived defensive tackle Gabe Hall and offensive lineman Kenyon Green, signed edge rusher and practice squad favorite Patrick Johnson to the active roster, placed fullback Ben Van Sumeren on IR after suffering a knee injury on the opening kickoff, added veteran defensive end Zadarius Smith, and traded 2 draft picks to the Jaguars in exchange for running back Tank Bigsby, which was a wild trade that I did not see coming. Let's start with Zadarius Smith, though. The 32-year-old signs a 1-year deal with the Birds and adds a strong veteran presence to such a young positional group in which prior to adding Smith, Josh Uche was the oldest, most veteran player in that group at just 26 years old. Even going into his 11th year in the league, Zadarius Smith adds positive value to the position group and a defense that struggled more than it should have in week 1. In the 2024 season with both the Browns and the Lions, Zadarius Smith had 35 tackles, 9 sacks, 17 QB hits, and 1 pass deflection. Now, are these the numbers near where he was when he was with the Ravens and the Packers just absolutely balling the fuck out? No. But they show that he can still be an impact player on this team. Now currently, as of Wednesday night, he sits behind Azeez Ojulari on the depth chart. However, I gotta imagine that'll change fairly quickly, especially considering that Ojulari was inactive and a healthy scratch, might you will, for week 1. We'll see how things go, and hopefully between him and having Jalen Carter back, our run defense will be similar to what we saw out of the 2024 crew. And as of this moment, he will be wearing the number 52 jersey. Now let's talk about Tank Bigsby. I was looking at the trade. I was just parked outside of Sheetz. I had gotten home from work and the notification popped up on my phone. Traded 2 picks for running back Tank Bigsby. And my first thought was, damn, we be signing everyone but a corner. Because considering Adoree Jackson got cooked like a Gordon Ramsay dish, I would have liked to have seen that we would sign a cornerback. However, considering that there have been various reports about Will Shipley dealing with a rib fracture, which hurts like a bitch if you haven't ever had one, and he could miss some time, that's when it made more sense to me, and I started liking this move a little more. Bigsby was the leading rusher for the Jags and adds a valuable asset to the kick return team, as he has experience returning kicks and will be able to replace Shipley while preventing Cooper DeJean from having to do double duty on special teams. So I'm excited to see what this move does for the Birds and how quickly Tank could become an impact player. And according to Twitter, as of Wednesday night, he is currently wearing the number 37 jersey, but I wonder if that'll change anytime soon. All right, y'all, let's look at some of my takeaways from week 1's matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys. First things first, Jalen Carter's absence negatively impacted the run defense. It was clearly evident that without Carter, Dallas's O-line stood a much better chance at blocking, considering they didn't have to double block Jalen Carter all night long, and it showed. The run defense allowed Javonte Williams to score 2 touchdowns on the ground, and defensive tackles in Carter's replacement, Moro Ojomo and Byron Young, struggled all night long despite Young's almost interception. Especially in goal line run defense, the Birds are going to have to step up this weekend if they want to get a better result. Next, we're still in trouble at the corner position. Despite getting a pass interference call that would lead to a Dallas rushing touchdown, Quinyon Mitchell only allowed 30 yards on the night and obviously didn't allow a touchdown through the air. However, the same cannot be said for Adoree Jackson or Jacorian Bennett. Now, Bennett, I can let slide a little bit. Since he's only been on the team for a couple of weeks, I can understand that. But Adoree Jackson, bro was with us the entire offseason, so he has no excuse for playing like ass all night long. Jackson allowed 103 yards on 7 targets and also committed a penalty. I don't care that it was against CeeDee Lamb, who's typically a quality wide receiver. That performance was trash. He looked like burnt toast out there, y'all. Philly has got to find an answer to that cornerback 2 situation. Now, they did work out a couple free agents earlier in the week, such as former Bengals cornerback Mike Hilton. Now, Hilton would be a massive improvement over Jackson solely based on that Thursday night performance. However, Hilton has played the majority of his career in the slot, and who knows what a transition to the outside could do to him. Now, there's been some speculation that the Birds could acquire Mike Hilton to play slot, and if they don't, they could look somewhere internally, such as Mac McWilliams, to do so, and slide DeJean out to the outside. However, I just don't know how I feel about that. DeJean has taken practice reps at slot and outside corner. However, in real game situations, he's only ever lined up in the slot. So, if we were to sign Hilton, I'll be curious to as how Vic Fangio and the defense approach this situation. If I just had to take a guess, they go out and get Mike Hilton, and then I assume they would move Cooper DeJean to the outside first, possibly to let Mike Hilton get practice reps at outside corner, then switch DeJean back to the nickel. All right, the final takeaway I'll talk about on this week's episode is that Jalen Hurts can still win games even when his receivers aren't impactful. Now, I don't know if it was Kevin Patullo's play calling or if Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland just had one hell of a night in coverage, but with Devontae Smith's 3 catches for 16 yards and A.J. Brown's 1 catch for 8 yards, it was clear that the wide receiver 1 and 2 didn't put up their best performances. However, Jalen Hurts proves once again to all the bullshit haters out there that he can win games even without his top 2 weapons. Jalen's 62 rushing yards for 2 touchdowns showed that he's still got it on his legs, and despite only 23 pass attempts, 19 of them were caught, including a 50-yard bomb to the wide receiver 3, Jahan Dotson, as well as hitting tight end Dallas Goedert for 7 catches and almost 50 yards himself. Even though Jalen only had 152 passing yards in this game, that's only 30 less than Dak Prescott on fewer attempts. Jalen had an 82.6% pass completion rate, while Dak Prescott had a completion rate of just 61.7%. Dak had 13 incompletions, and I know CeeDee Lamb had some drops, but he didn't have 13 drops. Plus, Dak was passing into what I would call subpar coverage, mainly for targeting Adoree Jackson, while Jalen Hurts was trying to throw against excellent coverage, and he made fucking smart decisions. He didn't have any turnovers. Meanwhile, Dak is just throwing the ball up there all willy-nilly, and 3 of those incompletions honestly should have been interceptions. A lot of bouncing around with the ball, almost catches, things like that. But there could have easily been 3 interceptions in that game had they caught the ball. So to anyone who thinks that Dak Prescott outplayed Jalen Hurts, you're just lying to yourself at that point. But that's another conversation. The point being is that Jalen Hurts continues to show in as many ways as possible that he can win despite the lack of numbers. And with that lack of numbers, he still had better numbers than Joe Burrow. I'll just say that. All right, y'all, moving on to the next topic, the Week 2 preview. After a scrappy win against a divisional foe, the Eagles head on the road to Kansas City, Missouri in a Super Bowl rematch. Jalen Carter returns to the lineup, but there's still a lot of questions and concerns in the Eagles secondary that need to be solved, along with some penalty issues that they need to work on. Kansas City is coming off a close loss to Justin Herbert in the Los Angeles Chargers, and in addition to Rashee Rice being out for 6 games due to felony charges related from a car crash, their wide receiver 1 Xavier Worthy could possibly be out due to a dislocated shoulder from some friendly fire from tight end Travis Kelce. But nothing has been confirmed as of Wednesday night whether Worthy will be in or out. The last time these two teams faced was in Super Bowl 59, where the Eagles absolutely dominated the Chiefs and thwarted their chances at a historic three-peat. Here are some of my takeaways on what the Birds need to do in order to get the win, along with some predictions. First point I need to make, the defense needs fucking discipline. Between the Jalen Carter ejection, multiple team fights, Nolan Smith's taunting penalty, which, if I'm being honest, that was a soft-ass call to begin with, and multiple pass interference calls, the defense, more so the secondary, did not have a great start to the season despite the win. And I feel like a lot of that was attributed to a lack of discipline. You know, when your star player gets ejected in the first 6 seconds, it kind of sets the mood in a negative way for the rest of the game. Although, I will say the defense did a pretty good job in the second half, not giving up any points to the Cowboys. However, CeeDee Lamb's uncharacteristic amount of drops came into the defense's help that night. As for the fighting, look, I get it. It's a divisional rival, and we fucking hate the Cowboys. But engaging in multiple fights doesn't help your team either. Kansas City potentially being down their top 2 wide receivers would be a big help in this game, but it does not guarantee anything. Our defense needs to be on point. They need to get their discipline together. And I really, really need Adoree Jackson or Jacorian Bennett to step the fuck up, especially if either one of them wants to maintain a starting role on this defense. Next, we got to open up this fucking pass game and get the ball to AJ and Devontae. Now, we've seen some games where AJ's shined and Devontae's been in the shadows, and vice versa. However, we've rarely seen any games where both players were relatively uninvolved. That cannot happen 2 games in a row. I'm anticipating a bounce back game from both of them, but I kind of anticipate one of them are going to have more targets than the other. Especially when you consider the last time these two played, they held Saquon to under 60 yards and no touchdowns in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs' number 1 priority coming into this game will once again be containing Saquon and the run game. That's why we have to open up our passing game, but at the same time, Brown and Smith have to find ways to get open. Kevin Patullo's got to figure out a way around Steve Spagnuolo's defense if we want to come out with this win. Next, look for Patrick Mahomes to scramble a lot. Mahomes is known for his scrambling abilities, even with all of his players healthy and on the field. With the potential of his top 2 weapons being out, we could see a lot more of his scrambling, so our run defense has got to get to him before he even has the chance. We did it many times in the Super Bowl, so just let's do it again this game. And my final point, don't underestimate the Chiefs' backup receivers. Now, obviously this contradicts my last take a little bit, but the Eagles should be prepared and refrain from underestimating the backup receivers. After Xavier Worthy's departure, the other receivers thrived against the Chargers. Hollywood Brown went 10 for 16 catching for 99 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster went 5 for 5 catching for 55 yards. Travis Kelce had 47 yards and a touchdown. And in Tyquan Thornton's debut, he achieved 41 yards on 2 catches with 4 targets. That's over 200 receiving yards alone without their top 2 weapons, since Xavier Worthy exited the game after just 3 plays. So, our corners and our safeties need to really, really be on point and treat these receivers as if they were playing against both Rice and Worthy at the same time, depending on his ability to play or not. All right, my predictions for this game. This is a game in which I think we have a bounce back performance on both sides of the ball. And despite Patrick Mahomes never starting 0-2, I think the Birds can change that. So I'm picking them to win in another close matchup with the score this time of 31-24, Birds coming out on top. I think A.J. Brown has a better game and gets 1 touchdown. I think Jalen Hurts will get 1 on the ground. Saquon will run it in for 2, and Jake Elliott will make 1 field goal. All right, y'all, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you all for joining so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok by searching at 2nd and 15 or by the full name 2nd and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast. You can find the audio for each and every single episode releasing Thursday mornings on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Player FM, Pocket Casts, or wherever you get your podcasts, with the video uploading to YouTube later that same day. This episode, 2nd and 15 and Old City Sports Network are brought to you by Iron and Steel Threads. Use promo code OldCity10 for 10% off the entire website. A portion of the proceeds will go to youth hockey organizations. Once again, thanks all for joining in. This is 2nd and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast powered by Old City Sports Network. Before we go, don't forget to watch this week's matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs this Sunday at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be nationally televised. This ought to be a good one, y'all. See you all next week. Don't forget to stay fly like an eagle. And as always, go Birds!